Mariamme is a true, complete activist in every sense of the word, and I've always been drawn to and enamored by your work with YWAT, which is Young Women's Action Team. Can you talk to us about that, because it is a local group, and they have gone beyond local in many of their activities.
They
but
have.
such a wonderful support for young women in our community.
I feel very lucky to be involved with this group of young women. YWAT started 6 years ago. It is a youth-led, adult-supported social change project that supports young women, particularly young women of color, to take action on issues that affect their lives. The main focus that YWAT has is an eradication of violence against women and girls. So all of their work in some way connects to ending violence against women and girls. The girls have, over the years, the core of how the group kind of began was through research, using participatory action research as the basis for action. And so they began by researching in the community how other young women of color in particular felt about the issue of street harassment, how they experienced it, what was the prevalence. They used that data to advocate with our local elected officials and others, community members, businesses. They launched something called the Respect Campaign in 2004, where they asked local businesses to put a respect poster up in their walls, and a ton of community businesses took part in that. When you walk down on Morse and Howard, some of those signs still are up today, almost 5 years later. They also do a whole bunch of community-based education, as you mentioned, beyond this community. They've gone all over. They've gone to New Orleans. They've gone to New York City to present on their work. They've taken that work initially that was about street harassment and moved into dealing with teen dating violence, which is particularly relevant with the Rihanna and Chris Brown situation that happened recently. And so they're asked a lot to go to schools and local community organizations to work with other youth on addressing how do you address the issue of healthy relationships? What are they? What are the warning signs of abuse? What can you yourself do? The current project and campaign that they're about to launch any day now, at the end of May, will be a campaign to take, they just finished their last research project, which is about sexual violence and assault on the CTA. On the trains and on the buses. And so they did a survey whereby they were able to get surveys from over 600 people who talked about their experiences on the CTA as it relates to sexual violence and assault. And over 50% of the people who responded suggested they have been sexually harassed on the CTA. Almost, I think it was 13 or 14% said they'd actually been sexually assaulted on the CTA. The vast majority of those people have not gone to the police or have not gone to the CTA. They have no idea where to go.
But is that because they're young?
The majority of the people who responded were young, under the age of 35, but there were also people who were over 35 who responded to the survey and had similar responses. And people also told their stories. So the young women had a forum last year where they asked people to share their harassment stories. Currently, a small video of that event is on YouTube. So if you go onto YouTube and you put in the CTA harassment project, you'll find the video that the girls did at their event. And it's basically testimonials of people's stories around sexual assault and sexual harassment. The plan is to take that data, to go to the CTA board and to ask them to have some very specific things, to change some of their safety regulations, to have more, those buttons that you push when you're in trouble, the emergency intercom buttons. A lot of them on the platforms don't work. So asking CTA to take some security measures, asking them to launch a public awareness campaign so that people know that when they are sexually assaulted or harassed on the CTA, they can call a hotline. Asking the police to take a different role. So they're about to launch that very soon, and that will lead, they're having an event on June 4th at 4 p.m. at the Thompson Center. It'll be a rally that will be the launch of that research project. They're asking people from around the city to go to their website, www Young Women's Action Team, where next week they will post information about this event that they're calling a ride-in. So a ride-in. So the notion is that you, from wherever you are in the city, ride on public transportation, and that you wear light blue so that you can be very much seen, and that you meet everybody down at the Thompson Center at 4 p.m. on June 4th, whereby YWAT will be launching this rally and launching the demands that they want CTA to respond to in order to make CTA safer. So there are a whole series of things that these young women do. They're between the ages of 11 to 22, and they are fabulous. So I'm very proud to be able to work with them on a regular basis.
I can see that in your eyes as you talk about it, and I also feel, knowing some of the girls, having worked in a space that I got to talk with and got to know. Actually, Daphne was on this show a couple years ago with me, and that's one of the young women leaders. And I know that you've already dealt with this because it's been 6 years that you've been together, but when the gals grow up, because this was begun by young women in high school, really young women, and even pre-high school age, some of them. How do they deal with transiting out of the young women time, and how do you keep that? I'm sure they keep the activism going, at least in the case of Daphne and some others.
Actually, you speak of Daphne has taken over as the director of Young Women's Action Team. So one of the ways that the young women transition out is to be taking even more leadership in the organization. They also remain part of the core. We call it the leadership core. All of the young women none of them are over 22. Young is now stretches to 30 years old. So
I'm so happy to hear that.
I'm sure that will continue on, and their involvement will continue on in various different ways. And new young women are constantly coming in, and they're constantly growing, and they're constantly continuing to add to that legacy of the work that the founders started in 2003.